and focusing on unique fans, super fans, and cross-pollination of content is what this next panel is going to be all about. The time is ripe for amplification of music usage in diverse ecosystems. We're going to have a large and a more detailed discussion on this. And I'd like to invite on stage Srishti, who will then be inviting the panel on. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Srishti from the Loudest team.
So who's excited for the World Cup tomorrow? I mean, come on, football fans, don't do that. Don't do that. Come on, who's excited for the World Cup tomorrow? That's what I'm talking about. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Srishti Das. I'm just a fan. And I really like the ring to, when I say that, especially at conferences. It's who I've been my entire life, but I'll tell you why just after I thank you all. I'm pretty sure you've all seen me just running around, and it's almost over, and we've had the best time. Your support is what has made this conference the way it is. The first time is something you always remember, but it's also always the toughest, and because of you all, it's been very fruitful. I have to thank Aprajita, who's now become one of my closest friends, even through all the mess that we've gone through over the last 2 weeks. I think it's mostly because of that. She's a great leader, and she's just pushed for all of this to happen day in and day out. And one of the things that she really did was for me to push my passions. And she always knew that I had this dream, and I always wanted to integrate music with sports. That's just something I always wanted to do. And she said, Srishti, go ahead, do this panel. I remember back in 2006 when the World Cup was going on and Shakira was just an upcoming artist. I didn't know who she was, but after that, watching her on the World Cup, that's it, I was a fan. My dad, when I was a kid, always wanted me to listen to Asha Bhosle, but it didn't matter to me till Brett Lee sang a song with her. And I watched WWE just because of all the different bands that were played on it. And then people say, is there really a connect between music and sports? Really? Well, as a consumer and as a fan, something I said I've been my entire life, it was all about how sometimes I found an artist, on a sporting channel, or how I saw, a sport because some artist was supporting it. But here's what really made me thinking, and especially this is where the idea of this panel comes from. Last year, I was reading my Manchester United newsletter, which, oh my God, is obviously the most important thing I read every week. And they announced that all the players from Manchester United would have their playlists on Deezer. I was like, okay, let me go ahead, see what Deezer is. It turns out to be a French streaming app. So, okay, I was like, that's it. I don't know what Deezer is, but I need it right now. So first thing I do, go download the APK, illegal use. I'm sorry, Deezer, but I mean, you tied up with Manchester United. Next thing, I was listening to Pogba's playlist on Deezer, and then I went on to find Stormzy, who was my next favorite artist. So basically, I went from my favorite sports team to a new streaming app to finding a new artist. But, these are all international examples, it's not that relevant to India and all of that. But remember Chalo India Dikha De? And I know everyone knows Jeet Bo, Jeet Bo, Jeet Bo Re. So I think I'm not getting to the point that well, and so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite my awesome superstar panel. I love all of them. They've really helped with creating this panel. And I'm going to name them. So I'm presenting Swaroop Banerjee from Adsto and TribeAsia, Sam Middlehurst from Music Run, Vinit Karnik from GroupM, Maneesha Khanna from Pepsico, Uday Sodhi from Sony Live, and of course we have this huge superstar, Shailendra Singh.
Thank you, guys. Hi, I'm Swaroop. Vinit Karnik from ESP, Uday Sodhi from Sony, Maneesha Khanna, Pepsi, Sam Middlehurst from Music Run, and obviously Shailendra Singh. I'll have to name 23 different organizations to introduce him. Thank you for waiting for this particular conference. We're here to talk about growth hacking in music and sports. How we're piggybacking is music really important. That video was about how you remember a large sporting format because of the track, and we'll be talking about that today. I'm going to start with Sam, and Sam has a music run as a world over property. It's been in 8 different countries. It's a property that has merged a marathon with a music festival. It's the perfect example of how a music property is a sports property and vice versa, and actually one of our largest examples today on how in 8 different countries with 250,000 runners over the last 4 years, a property that has amalgamated music and sports is working. Sam, how did this happen? I know the idea came over a bunch of glasses of whiskey, but beyond that, how did that go?
Well, I think what we started from was we looked at a problem which we felt a younger consumer was not being active enough. And we looked at how do we create a property for that consumer. We looked at running. 80% of participation in mass events is through running. And we wanted to create a property for a millennial, which was relevant to them, and we therefore looked to music, which is the most consumed thing by millennials. And the relationship between running and music was something that was organic, it wasn't forced. I think ever since Sony invented the Walkman in '79, people have been running to music, but that's a very individual experience. So we wanted to look to the music industry and we wanted to say, how do we create a social experience using running, and that's really where the music run came from.
Thanks, Sam. And I know you did a Bangalore edition, so we're going to have more of a music run in closer home as well.
Yeah, correct. I mean, we've done 2 events in Bangalore. They've been growing. I think we've got big ambitions for India. I think it's a fantastic market. I think this conference is testimony to the amount of energy that's going into the music industry. I also think that fitness is something that's becoming more serious within this market. So I think there's a great opportunity we talk about is inspiring people to live the beat, and that's getting out there, being active, trying to live every day better than the day before.
Thanks, Sam. Maneesha, we've been discussing brand Pepsi in the world of music, the history that in the decades that the brand has believed in both these formats equally, has experimented, has created some of the tallest order and closer home, whether it was, I remember I used to be in MTV in those days, and I think we formed Pepsi MTV Indies, which was, I mean, digital wasn't as large at that point of time, and you guys took a bold step by creating your own broadcast. There was cricket that you've always supported, but my largest heart in music and sport, and the topic that we are, is the Pepsi halftime in the Super Bowl, and how you've got Justin Timberlake, a Lady Gaga. That halftime is as large as the sport itself. How does a brand believe in multiple formats? Does it come from the consumer point of view? Are we going to see more of Pepsi halftime kind of initiatives over in India, your brand's point of view?
So Pepsi's believed in sports and music, and I think over the last 60 to 70 years, it's consistently invested in both of them meaningfully and over a very long period of time. And I think that has really given it that right to succeed. And when they talk about music or when they put their might behind it, I think it works. And whether it was the FIFA song in 2014, it had a right to be there because it was Pepsi talking about it. So there has been a very long-term mindful enablement in the fabric of the brand that has been built in with a lot of thinking, with a lot of, I think over time it has meant something to the consumer. But when you look at platforms that are sports and music, there are a lot of times when you don't find fitment with each other. And the one good example of where it really worked was the halftime show. And I think that was a beautiful, it's one of the most beautiful amalgamations of sport and music coming together in a scaled ecosystem where this is not really a sponsorship but a partnership where NFL and Pepsi together invest in the largest musical extravaganza that the world has seen. And I think it works beautifully for both the brands, and it's also a very long-standing sports relationship with the NFL. So I think it works when it's inbuilt in the fabric and the DNA of the brand, when it's a partnership to start with, and then you can see yourself 50 years down the line thinking about, this is where I'm still going to be relevant to this consumer in a cultural context, because this sports and this music history has been relevant to me in the history that the brand has built over time. And speaking that cultural context, I think has been something that Pepsi's done beautifully over time. We've spoken about it in the earlier panel as well. So I think it's really built its space in something like that. Bringing it to India, and I think we're now poised with this ecosystem. Maybe 5 years ago was a little too early, but today I think we really are well poised to create a big impact. There are challenges in the ecosystem that we still have to think about in terms of barriers to entry and what's stopping us from making this large. And I think we still have to think about what will this do for the brand in terms of its business needs. But bringing sports and music and that fan in the middle of it who's very centrally, I think looking forward to that experience, is that opportunity exists. I think it makes sense to think about creating that ecosystem which will be meaningful for a brand from an economic point of view, and also from creating a scaled ecosystem which didn't exist before. Because it's expensive, it's unsustainable, and to do it meaningfully, it cannot be a short-term approach. That's one.
But we're going to, there is hope that a large format like that will arrive here.
It should. It has all the right to be.
Good. Music Run has hope. There you go, Sam. We can send the pitch in soon. Uday, thank you so much for joining us today. I know FIFA is breaking tomorrow on Sony Live, and it's larger than life. Everyone's looking forward to that. The consumer has moved over to you on a platform that is on demand, and he or she can consume it. And a sporting format like that, the anthems with it. Anything and everything that you can tell me about the consumption pattern of the same fan that Maneesha talked about, or a property that Sam talked about, but that person is consuming it on your platform. Is music and sport, do you see a similar pattern? Do you see an overlap? Do you see consumption behaviors are getting more encouraged towards piggybacking on each other in these two formats?
So I think it's important to step back a little and see what's happening in the overall environment today. If you look at the consumer, and I think the whole battle here is about the consumer, the conversation is about the consumer and the passion that music and sports is able to bring out in a consumer. And is there, does one amplify the other or the other way around? We have to, that's the real story here. If you look at the consumption pattern on digital OTT or digital video today, we are seeing about 250 odd million users out there who are right now consuming some sort of content on the digital video ecosystem, which is about 25 crore odd people. So that's a fairly large set of people who are now using the screen, the small screen that we carry in our pockets, as an entertainment screen. That number is growing extremely rapidly. And if that 250 million people are going to be sports lovers, sports fans, my guess is in a single TV home, we are going to see a lot of people move off to the small screen to consume sports, and sports which the entire family does not follow. So if the entire family is not going to follow because of timing, or it's not going to follow because it's more important to watch more entertaining stuff which is available to the entire family, then I think a lot of alternatives are now available with either watching it on a laptop or a small screen or a tablet or whatever. So I think that is the huge shift we are seeing. And we've been doing football now for a while. In fact, 2014 World Cup was also done on Sony Live. And, obviously the environment, the entire ecosystem has changed significantly. And now we're wondering how many people will come in this year. How big is it going to be? There is no real benchmark out there, but it's going to be an exciting experience for a lot of people this time, because for the first time FIFA is at India-friendly timing. It's going to be available on everybody's phones through Sony Live. It's going to be available on TV. So we're going to have a great spectacle. It is the biggest game in the world. And we're all going to be surprised at the end of it to find out how many football fans are out there. Coming to the music aspect, I think the music and the sports aspect has a lot to do with how music amplifies the experience and how the build-up is done through music. How much of how music plays a part in the fan experience of that particular team.
So Uday, just over here and at this point of time, the anthem that you created, does that actually is that engaging? Does that drive, let's call it a promo of sorts, because I'm from a broadcast background. Does an anthem on an OTT platform drive more consumer eyeballs towards a sport or looking forward to it? Does it make difference? Because that for me is music. That for me is an entertaining way to say that here's the World Cup and watch it to the younger consumer.
So my guess is there are multiple factors which bring in the consumer. I don't think the anthem is only one part of it. It is probably one part of it and not the entire thing. Anthem obviously plays a part of it, and I think the anthem comes from the effort which FIFA worldwide puts in to build the game. It's not something which is done in India. Hopefully the sport becomes big enough in India that we can create fan anthems.
I think Sunil has ensured a lot of that happening.
Yeah, and you know, obviously, you know, there are enough creative people in India to be able to create. So the campaign that we created this year was about, following your country. You're adopting a country, Meri Nai country, or you're really.
It was encouraging to see Times of India pick it up and call it Meri country, and that was.
So I think what is happening is we will all now back some country or the other, and the good fun would have been if it would have been really exciting if musicians in India would have created anthems for each of the countries that they're going to follow.
Shailendra, before you say anything on that, I'm going to come to Vinit. Vinit Karnik, ladies and gentlemen. The amount of money that this man moves between all of us is incredible. And my question, as a catalyst, there are creators on this panel, all right? There's a brand, there's a producer, there's an OTT platform where everyone's moving. You are the catalyst. Music platforms land up at your door. You enable it. You enable the creator to take the creator to the brand. A sports format lands up at your door. You've done, I think you've moved money for whether it's IFA or an ESPS, GroupM, for the IPL. More or less the brands that are spending that kind of money are not very far from the tree. And is it the same brand? Is it the same spending? Is the same spending pattern available because of the fan on music formats and sports formats? Do you see these two together? Would you ever advise a brand to say, you know what, if this is the business objective, here's a sporting format, however, here's a music format as well? And how does that go from a catalyst point of view?
Yeah, look here, music is a pretty much an integral part of for sport. I mean, why sport? It's an integral part of any business for that matter. And I've been saying it for a while now that, in fact, brands are the biggest consumers of music in terms of subscription or original creation of that music. So just to build on Uday's point on and what you possibly wanted to lead up to the anthems, the interesting point about music and sports and the linkage of how music and sports actually build a sport and the popularity of that sport comes from the stem of, so basically we categorize every sport watcher into three parts, fans, followers and flirts. What actually happens is all these anthems and music pieces actually builds great amount of curiosity and build up in bringing new people to consume sport and watch sport. And that's the primary objective of anthems and music pieces that we see in sport. So how do you move the needle from flirt to a fan and fan to a follower? So that's a brilliant bridge which music actually builds. Answering your question on how do we possibly look at synergizing sports and music, actually we don't look at it in isolation. We look at it as one piece. And one of the points that I would like to drive to the creative community and the creators in the room is that this piece can't be seen in isolation. The creators will have to work with aggregators, platforms and create solutions, create business solutions for the brands if you want brands to invest on music and sports. So that's the message that possibly I would like to drive, that you can't work in silos. You can work brilliant thematics, great ideas. Unless those great ideas are linked to business, from a brand perspective, it becomes a little tricky for people like us to then find solutions or monetization solutions for you guys.
Shailendra Singh, First off, I'm a big fan. Sunburn, nearly a decade and a little more ago, 20, 25 plus businesses. You're almost as serial as it gets on the entrepreneur side. Lucifonia Games, Futsal. There are, as a creator, one of the largest creators in the country that produces some of these formats, some of the largest formats. Your view on how these formats, I know you and I will go to brands, we'll take a format and it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but you have the last hour, your vision was always to synergize this, whether it's the films that you've done, I've read the book. From a creator's point of view, from a producer's point of view, do you see these two things together? I know the opening ceremonies and the closing ceremonies are as large as the game itself, at least here in India, even it is for a format like the IPL or futsal, or for that matter, or worldwide that we see. Your view on the largest productions in sports and music, are they getting synergized? Will we see more larger music runs, a much larger music run? Would you create something like that on your own and put it out there?
I think my reason to be on this panel, first of all, Shushti, she's the one who curated this panel. I thought it was fascinating. I mean, it was making India future-proof, to be honest. So I think compliments to you for thinking this through. I feel that we are in crisis mode in India. We don't understand the potential of this topic. This is my feeling, and the reason I'm here is that all the people here in the room, some of you are paid to come here, some of you are invited, and whoever's paid is looking for business opportunities. So this is bang on the ultimate business opportunity. We come from the land of music. We're not athletes. We're trying to now be athletes, which is fantastic because we have the youngest population on the planet. But we're actually musicians at heart. Imagine we say cricket is a religion and we don't have an anthem. Our anthem is Sachin, Sachin. Now he retired. We don't know what to say in a stadium. Like, seriously. So I feel the potential is immense. Now, taking an example, going back to the science behind it, all the top commercials of our lives that we remember in our lives are the jingles, right? It's the tune. Now the power of the tune is established, for sure, whether from a Nirma to anything in our lives. Imagine putting that onto the sport that we are so desperately trying to get attention for. This is a no-brainer whatsoever for this to happen now. So I truly believe that the opportunity for India is fascinating. And I don't think it is an added investment. No, it's an integral part. Because I think both go hand in hand, to be honest, because all athletes love music, for sure. All fans who look up to athletes obviously love music. Because music is a source of inspiration. To train, to play, to unite people all over the world, etc., etc., etc. I think it's the fastest moving connector is music with sport. This is brilliant. But we, as a nation of 1.3 billion people and 600 million people below the age of 25, are constantly looking at the past or the present. We don't think of the future. So 2019 is a World Cup in England for cricket. And we just sat here in the lobby this afternoon because I was here. And we call in the best musicians when we made an anthem this afternoon. Because I truly believe that India should have an anthem next year. I agree with everybody because there's a perspective that is important. Like you said about the money will have to be logicalized or put science behind it. You're spot on that it has to have a sort of legacy and DNA. He's just an adventurer. He's an explorer. He's just having fun with the ideas. And I mean, you know, FIFA. Wow. We are the largest fans of football in the whole world in India. So, I mean, compliments to you. You know, a big celebration for you allowing these fans to consume the World Cup. So big opportunity, and I feel that people in this room, this is business. This is just not passion. So this panel is really important, I think.
Thanks, Shailendra. Thank you very much. We've got just enough time to take questions. Guys, you've got some mavericks on the panel. Please pick your questions from brands to creators to the catalysts in the platform. They're all here. Music, sport, growth hacking. We'll take questions starting now.
When we talk about music and sports, we've observed for sports campaigns, we usually have sports stars endorsing it. So, I mean, is there a stereotype or a bottleneck we need to break there to get people from other avenues of life to probably star along with a sports star, or just have somebody out of the box idea, somebody from a different field endorsing a sports brand? I hope you're getting my drift, because cricket sells, that cricket cricketers selling a lot of sports brands and stuff like that. Of course, badminton, again, that's Sania. So, I mean, I just want to know that if I am to endorse a sports brand with a jingle and everything, do I have to necessarily take a sports star? I know this is a little out of context, but...
Okay, there are about 2-3 questions next. Sam, I think you would be right in trying to answer that, and then I just want Shailendra's opinion as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say that there's a lot of brands out there that are not being one-dimensional and looking at, okay, we're a sports brand, therefore we use a sports athlete. I think there's a lot of great examples, as we saw on the video at the start. Nike is using its global influencers in a campaign where they're bringing together music artists, they're bringing together sports stars who represent them in different disciplines, and they're celebrating a city, and Nike is sitting behind that. I think that's a great example of how brands are able to leverage different talent to tell the story. I think from a properties standpoint, we would look at it in a similar way. You know, the Music Realm, we have the ability to look at people who represent health and fitness and people who represent music. So I think you need to work with any form of ambassador to tell the story that's relevant to your brand or your property, and it's about how you select that talent.
Just one small point of view from my side. I think the reason anybody wants an endorsement and why you should have one is to have a source of authority. And if you don't find that source of authority in somebody who has no business making that endorsement, then it doesn't make sense. So I think you need to see how far you can stretch that source of authority to be relevant to that conversation. If it's not relevant, then that's your answer. So I think that's what brands are looking for. So you look at a source of authority in a news anchor, or you look at a source of authority in a musician or a sportsman. But you need to have the source of authority to be in that conversation.
Thanks, that was very nicely answered.
Thanks. Speaking of the authority point of view, and Maneesha, we were chatting about this earlier, and I'm really incredibly moved with the entire Mountain Dew bit that you're doing with Arjun Vajpayee, and the amount of eyeballs that it's been able to garner. And then there was the Hrithik ad on the back of the... So you've actually used a source of authority in sport to tell the real story using an entertainer like Hrithik to make it large.
So we made a differentiation, and we didn't use a celebrity, but we used an authentic story done by a real person to make that story relevant to the consumer who's no longer, again, back to source of authority. Why should I be looking at the story of a mountaineer? Is it an ad, or is it a story that will move me to believe in Riskutha Nambana, right? And then we got a storyteller to tell that story, which will bring in the eyeballs to get that scale to that platform. So I think the context was a source of authority and a storyteller to come together to make it powerful enough and to give it that scale. But that's the usage, that's the way the model works, rather than saying, I'm going to just get a celebrity and I'm going to make an ad where the celebrity is going to scale a mountain, and that's my film.
So the classic example of the source of authority in sport using an entertaining storyteller to tell a very large story, which was Riskutha Nambana. And it actually moved, in this case, I think 80 million odd views, and I know how largely organic that was because I kind of followed it from day one. But does this move on a platform like yours, do stories like these that have source of authorities in sports, using musicians, I think that was largely the question, and bringing us back to that 360 cycle all the way from Shakira to Ricky Martin to all the way now. Do you still think that music will not move an engaging sports audience in the direction of the sport because of the music?
So sports is one aspect of it, and I think some of us in the pure sports... yeah, you know, we can debate about what's pure sports, but yeah, from the sports action point of view, yes, we know that there are multiple aspects of what impacts the consumer. It's one of the key things is the music around it and the whole ambience that it creates. It also depends on a lot on the stars that are involved, not only in the music, but also in the sport. And that's so relevant to a country like ours. You know, we follow our stars, we follow our heroes. And a sport like cricket has created so many heroes. And all of a sudden now we have a sport like badminton that has some heroes. And all of a sudden the viewership has started coming to it,
I think
the advertisers started coming to it. So yes, music does play a part. There's no doubt about it. And I'm sitting in this panel which talks about music and sport. But there is a lot to sports which has to do with the sport itself, the people around it, the quality of the sport, the way it's played, the passion that it bring out from the consumer.
I think Shelly and I are going to turn you into a believer very soon. But thank you, everyone.
Have a short point.
Yeah.
Actually, so to answer your question, I don't think music plays a great amount of role to popularize the sport and building the sport. Music is somewhere created to celebrate sport. So you can create the best sporting anthem in the world, and you can still, if the play and the game that you see is not going to be of great quality, the tournament is not done well, I don't think you are going to get eyeballs there. So I think it's a source of celebration is the way I would put that, and obviously building curiosity around it. Having said that, it comes at a price. Because it comes at a price, then obviously brands or creators or consumers would have to obviously look at it from the lens of the cliche term, which is ROI. Okay, how do we go beyond ROI? The couple of various models worldwide available, and obviously in India also we are maturing to follow those. In terms of how are we going to be measuring the spends on the metric of return on objectives. We are also moving forward to say if it's an impact, how are we going to be measuring that impact for the investment and for the creative that we have created, and what it delivers to me as a business solution. Was eventually there has to be an objective very sharply defined. Yeah. So various different ways to look at it, but predominantly if you have to look at sport and music, it's predominantly built and created to celebrate sport. I don't think it delivers value in building sport to the extent that we're talking about there.
Fair enough. Shelly, you had a point?
Yeah, just short point. That clock, don't get worried with the clock, because they started 25 minutes late for us.
Correct. It's about 30 minutes late. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, guys. We're not leaving.
But I just had a point that I think most athletes will shoot me for. I believe that at least in our country, sports is entertainment. And therefore, we have wrapped it around that. So we can go back in time, and a short example is that in 1994, I was lucky enough to have a team that we launched the first T20 cricket match in this country. 1997, I had a T20 match on Sony, Set Max. It was live. It was Azharuddin versus Sachin Tendulkar in Wankhede Stadium. We landed a helicopter. We had an album. For every athlete who walked out, we had a song. For Sachin, we had a song, Sachin, Sachin. World Cup jeet ke leke aana, Sachin, Sachin. So I felt, and then BCCI banned me for making cricket entertaining. They said, you're making mockery of the sport. I said, Mr. Dalmia, I'm really sorry about this. And they told me to go home. And I'd done 80 of these masala cricket matches. Most of them were on Sony those days. 9 years later, IPL was born. Put IPL on one side, one day and test cricket on the other side. Look at the numbers today. So I feel somewhere the sport is the product, music is the packaging. And I may sound not so interesting today. Wait and watch. I truly believe that FIFA deserved a kick-ass anthem, because FIFA is just not Football World Cup. It unites the entire planet. It had that energy, that track that could have been released, which is there, but none of us know what it sounds like. Phenomenal. Next World Cup in England, cricket. I mean, I feel that music can be a huge energy and for brands, it can be a very, very relevant ROI-driven activation. And I feel that it can actually result in product sales, etc. in the future. So yes, I mean, that's the reason I was here. I said, this is bang on, man. But this is making yourself future-proof.
Give a big round of applause, guys. I mean, how many panelists do you see with so much passion? Thank you so much for this. Thank you, Vinit, Uday, Maneesha, Sam, and Shailendra. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks a lot.
A big thank you to our panel and of course to our moderator as well, and an extra 10 points to Shailendra for the jazzy shoes.